Paul, I'm assuming you probably have some sympathy with these striking workers, but do you think a compromise can actually be met, or is this going to bleed into an autumn of ongoing industrial action?
I hope a compromise can be met. And the truth is, Alex, I know as a trade unionist that disputes like this always have to end in a compromise one way or the other. But I would simply say, look, it takes two to tango. It seems that we often put the onus on compromise on trade unions and not enough responsibility on employers and the government. And I think as a trade unionist, I speak to colleagues in the trade union movement. I speak to workers every day. And there's a lot of anger. People are sick and tired of being told that they have to keep paying the price for economic crises that were not of their making. You know, we had the global financial crisis in 2008 and a decade of austerity that followed that. And pay rises during that period were pretty paltry. We've now got the cost of living crisis. And it seems to me that it's always workers who are being told, you have to show restraint, you have to tighten your belts. Well, what about some of the big corporations showing profit restraint in order to alleviate the cost of living crisis? So there is a lot of anger out there. And people don't strike unless it's a last resort. You know, I've been in an experience where I've stood on picket lines and I've lost money, and it's often an agonising decision for people to take, especially during a cost of living crisis when they know they're going to lose money. And when they do it, it's usually because they have a legitimate reason.
I mean, the argument from Grant Shapps is the government's offer, which I believe is an 8% pay rise, should be put to the members of the union at this point. I mean, it's not in line with inflation, which is now in double digits, but actually the national average pay has gone up by only 4%. So surely what's being offered now is relatively generous, considering a 1% rise would cost the government £1 billion a year. Do you think it's time that the big bosses of the union should say to their workers, well, what do you think about this?
Well, I think, look, the RMT is a self-governing organisation, and it seems to me that it's for them to decide how they should consult with their membership. And I have to say, as a trade unionist who knows many people in the RMT, I don't sense that there's any disgruntlement among the RMT membership with their leadership. They seem to have tremendous support from their membership, the leaders of the RMT. So ultimately, look, it's for them to decide. But, you know, I simply say to people, going on strike is a difficult thing to do, even to get strike action in this country, where we have some of the most restrictive trade union laws in Europe. You have to jump through all sorts of hoops in order to get there. And the RMT have done that. And the RMT have done that because they've got what they feel to be a legitimate case. And when people talk about, well, you know, they're getting 8% or you know, potentially being offered 8% or whatever, let's remember that inflation is higher than that, as you touched on yourself, Alex. So what the unions are asking for are not inflation-busting pay increases, not even pay increases that meet inflation. What they're asking for is actually a real terms pay cut, but just something better than is on the table at the moment. And I have to say as well, I've been listening to your discussion, I think the danger of not paying people fairly and not giving people decent pay increases. We talk about the danger of inflation. What about the danger of a recession? We're facing a recession later on in the year. We're facing a recession arguably because there's going to be a lack of demand in the economy, and you don't improve that by making things more difficult for people and holding their wages down. You then get into that vicious cycle of bankruptcies and closing businesses and unemployment,